You're listening to the Results Driven Organizations podcast with Dr. Tanya Lowe, a podcast of curated conversations with C-suite leaders and those who support organizational growth and development. Get ready for inspiring interviews, educational lessons, and thought-provoking discussions that will challenge you to execute something new and innovative that will drive results in your organization. And now, here's Dr. Tanya Lowe.
Episode 41 of the Results Driven Organizations podcast with Dr. Tanya Lowe, using my results driven philosophy of strategy, leadership, teams, and customer experiences. I help organizations develop their best kept secret, their human capital. This podcast is designed to expand the conversation with C-suite leaders and those who support organizational growth and development and what it really takes to create, develop, and maintain results-driven and high-performing organizations. Our guest today is the visionary leader, Sean Languedoc. Sean is the CEO and founder of Outforce. With a remarkable track record, Sean has triumphantly crafted 4 tech companies within the vibrant landscape of Canada, extending his entrepreneurial spirit across 8 countries spanning 3 continents. Recognizing the formidable challenge of securing senior tech talent, and many of you I know are challenged with that, Sean embarked on a transformative journey to inject a data-driven precision into the world of outsourcing. His unwavering commitment to innovation and his profound understanding of the intricacies of building thriving organizations have crystallized into his mission, empowering tech companies to establish resilient and dynamic teams in a manner that is both expedient and uncomplicated. Sean, welcome to RDO.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lowe, for that introduction. It's a pleasure to be here.
I'm so glad to have you here all the way from Canada. So Sean, we were talking a little bit before we started, and what I'm going to do, I'm just going to jump right in, and some of those things that we talked about, feel free to interject them wherever you see fit. So staffing and outsourcing, I believe, are 2 big challenges that organizations have today, especially post-pandemic. Are we post-pandemic? After the pandemic, right?
So far.
So tell us about the specific challenges you encountered when hiring senior tech talent after building 4 tech companies, and how did this experience inspire you to adopt this data-driven approach?
Yeah, well, thanks. That's a great question. I'd say that in technology, you go through a lot of ups and downs. And when you go through an up, it might be because you've got funding. It might be because you've got a major account. And at that point, you need to grow your team faster than you were when you were just bootstrapping and trying to pull people together. Mm-hmm. And at that point, I'd call it the inflection point. You need to hire faster than you can hire. And so that at that point, you start to look at, all right, what is my core competence and who do I need to hire in-house and what can I outsource? And at that point, you have a totally different experience because in-house, you have a good process. You know how to do the interviews. You know what to look for. You've probably done it a couple of times in other areas besides technology. But when it comes to outsourcing, there's hundreds of thousands of companies out there. And so you don't know where to start. I mean, half of them feel like they're hitting your inbox every day or soliciting you on LinkedIn. So it's just a lot of noise and it's hard to filter through that noise. I describe it something like, when you're hiring, it's a desert out there. It's hard to find good people. And when you decide to go outsourcing, it's like water everywhere, but not a drop to drink, right? Mm-hmm. So what do? You go to people that you trust, because that's what you're really looking for is trust.
Yeah.
If you've built a company to a certain level, it's like giving your baby to the daycare for the first time. You better you better know that place inside out before you give your child to that place. So you go to friends, and your friend, maybe you're a doctor and you're doing something in health tech. and your friend is in banking and finance and has done something in fintech. Well, that agency that they used might know nothing about medical practices, might know nothing about the tech stack you are currently operating in. Mm-hmm. So you really sort of run out of options when you run out of friends. And good companies that are used are generally booked. So you're just going to talk to them and they'll say, yeah, we can get you that. And you're really just kicking your own hiring down the road a bit. Mm-hmm. So then your second option is you look online. And when you're looking online, now you're subject to search engine optimizers and who's best at that. And then, or you go to a country where you think there's really good engineers, and that might be, Ukraine or Poland or Brazil. And, I equate that to saying, well, okay, I'm from Canada. If you're from Southern United States, you want to build a hockey team, you probably go to Canada. Well, I'm a skier, so good luck with me, right? And in Ukraine, there's 1,600 dev shops. So where do you start, right?
Wow.
So really, the bottom line is nobody has the data on who's good at what. And really, nobody has a lot of time to do enough due diligence. You're busy building your company. It's a hard slog. And then nobody has a process that is appropriate for outsourcing, which is very different from the process that you would use for hiring. Mm-hmm. And so process, data, and time are lacking. And that's why I decided to solve it, because I went through the same problems when I was growing my companies. We would outsource something, we'd keep our core, but we would parcel out something that what I would describe as a safe parallel swimming lane. Building an API, which is an application interface to another product, or a new front end for a large account, so that they could have their own interface, but it was our business running underneath it. So those are the things that we went through, and those are the struggles that I had, and the reason that I started this company.
Wow. As you were talking, I could relate to many of the things that you said, from my own experiences as an entrepreneur, as well as helping many of my clients, some on the entrepreneur end and some in the corporate sector. And you're right. It's when you're hiring, it's really hard to try to find that right fit. And then when you want to outsource, your inbox is overflowing. It's overflowing.
Exactly.
And then you're stuck with, who do I choose? And what happens if I choose wrong? So what I'm hearing is data is very helpful in making these decisions.
Correct.
So did you have to do a lot of research and development?
3 years. Yeah. 3 years and a lot of people. So prior to this, I had a international recruiting agency.
Okay.
And the story behind that was, it was a side of the desk thing. I was helping actually people who had H-1Bs in the United States, which is the temporary work permit. They were coming from other countries. And during the previous administration, there was a lot of friction in either renewing that or getting one. And in Canada, we have a very open immigration policy. We really want technology workers. So you can get a work permit in 2 weeks in Canada if you've got the right credentials. That's the service level that they're trying to work on.
I'm on my way.
Yeah. And a lot of people, so, some people were threatening to have to go back to their country of origin, whether it's India or Ukraine or wherever. Right. And that really put the companies that were using those people in a tough spot, because they were key assets in their technology stack or professional in whatever field they were. Mm-hmm. So I would bring them to Canada so they could work from Canada, and not have to go so far away, so they could still work in the time zone. So somehow I became a recruiter, and then more friends of mine said, "Hey, I hear you got these great engineers." I said, "Yeah, well, they're just specialized and they're working for somebody else." "No, can you get me more?" So I started to use that network. And to answer your question about research, I started with that network. Unfortunately, we had this thing called COVID, and at a certain point, I couldn't bring anybody into Canada anymore. And that's why I pivot to what we're doing today, which is knowing the remote is now okay with most people.
Yeah.
The funny thing about talent is it's everywhere. It's just not evenly distributed.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I was pulling great people from great places, Ukraine, like I said, Poland, South Africa, French North Africa for some of my French clients in Canada. And so we had a great network, and we had built that network through a lot of research. And then we used that network to ask, who's good at what in your country for outsourcing? What are the good agencies and what are they good at? And that's how it started. But it went a lot further and deeper than that. Yeah.
Wow. That is awesome. So guys, I know you're listening to this and you may be saying, but he's talking about tech. What does this have to do with me? Well, I'm going to need you to listen a little closer, because everything that Sean is talking about is transferable to what you do in your companies. You know, I'm really big on data. What does the data say? How can we use the data instead of making so many assumptions? So that's the first tip. You know, are you collecting data on your hiring practices, where you're recruiting from, what relationships you have? I heard you say, you know, your network, right? And so once you take that data, you can really apply it to your organization, to fill the gaps, fill any gaps that you may have, or to not keep going down the same rabbit hole, which is I see a lot of organizations do with their hiring process. It's like you're getting the same thing and doing the same thing, getting the same results. It's called insanity.
Exactly.
So you got to do something different.
Exactly. Yeah. And bringing net new into your organization brings a whole new perspective into the organization. So, you know, it depends on what you're building or what you're doing. And it does, you're right. It applies to everything you do.
Yeah.
I'll take it a step back. When people think of outsourcing, at least in technology, they immediately think of India, you know, and out there, way out there. But there's hundreds of agencies just in any city that you live in the United States that are perfectly good. And so we built the database so you could hire next door to far shore. And so we have 79,000 companies in the database. And what was different is when you look, and what I want to do is help people not fall into the same rabbit holes that a lot of people do when they look at outsourcing. You know, let's say they did find an agency and they ask, can you do this? Of course, they're going to say, yes, we can do that, sir.
Of course I can do that.
Exactly. I've got just the right people. And there's a lot of bait and switch that goes on with who you meet versus who you get. And so you really have to look at a variety of things beyond what they say. And that's where a process comes in. And so what we did was we asked a different kind of question. We wouldn't say, hey, you know, what can you do? They give us 14 things they do really well. Yeah, nobody does 14 things really well.
Right.
So we'd say, if we brought you the perfect client, what business would it be in? Oh, we'd build marketplaces. Oh, we're health tech. Oh, we're travel. Oh, we're whatever, right? So they have domain expertise. And that's what you really want to get first out of the gate. It's table stakes, really, when you come down to it, but it's hard to get the truth. If you ask the question the reverse way, you actually get what they're really excited about. And so if you're building your first company in a domain, be it health tech, travel, finance, whatever it is, you want people who understand your business. So you don't have to explain how it works and what people do and what the user experiences are like. So that's number one. Then you ask, if you've established what your tech stack is, what software and libraries you're using, then you ask, okay, so what tech stack would it be in if that's your best domain?
Right.
And I'd say, well, what's the proof point on that? How many people do you have with at least 5 years experience in that technology? Right. Now I know that if I bring a client to that company and they're good in that space, and what's nice is they've built 10 of what I'm building for my first time, right? So they can contribute to product knowledge that nobody else can bring. Then I know that if, let's say I hire 3 or 4 people in contract, one of them might be a runt in the litter, right? It might not be great at communicating, might not handle criticism very well, or whatever that might be.
The soft skills.
Right. then I know at least there's 20 other people in the organization who fit the same criteria that can be swapped out.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and then the third thing and last thing to look for is in that interview process, what's the culture of their company and does that fit with ours?
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, I was just having this conversation with the CEO on Friday about interviewing, because people interview well. They interview very well. And they invest in a lot of, you invest a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of energy into new hires that can't perform. And we can't interview for positions like we did in 2002. We've got to interview differently. We have to ask behavioral based questions. I love how you said ask the question in reverse. And so now you're hearing, oh, okay, well, they really fit over here. They can't do it all. They really fit in this block. And so now I can think about you in this block and for these particular clients or for these particular programs if you're not a tech company. So I love that. And then do they fit into the culture of your organization? Talk about that a little bit.
Well, there's a lot to do with culture. That's the secret sauce, right?
It really is.
And extract that in the interview process is something that we do really, really well. We coach our clients on how to ask those kinds of questions. But it's really the difference between whether somebody actually understands the nuance of what you're saying at the end of the day. Because if they're right across the street and you're going there, then you can hammer that through. But sometimes they're further away. So there might be literally not just the physical distance, but the cultural distance. And so what does I understand really mean in one culture versus I'm nodding my head on another? They're completely different things, right?
Yes.
And so if you're coming, so just as an example, in Southeast Asia, there's a lot of hierarchical cultures. And so in those cultures, people are sometimes trained not to ask questions or not to challenge the boss. But here in North America, it's very flat, right? You tell them, you don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
There are situations where you want people to tell you what's right and what's wrong and have the best decision win. And in other cultures, maybe it's a little too dominant where they're saying, I'm the only one who knows what's going on. You guys are all idiots and get out of the room. So somewhere between those two is where we live in North America. And so understanding whether they've worked with that kind of culture or whether they actually operate in that kind of culture is even more important. How they treat their employees, whether they're, because you can have a high churn rate if they're not treating their employees well. And you get one person or three people on your team, and then all of a sudden they're splitting because they're getting, a much better work environment at another company or a much higher pay or whatever the case is. So you look for those real, those nuances, but most importantly, it's communication, because that's what you deal with every day, and understanding what they're meaning, what they're saying when they're nodding their heads or I understand. And then you come back a week later and they have no clue what you were talking about last week. And you go, whoa, why didn't you ask?
And that is something I think that is, it fits across all cultures, Sean, because I can remember early in my entrepreneurial career, having a contract for a huge Fortune 500 company. And it was the unwritten rule that you don't ask questions. And this is here in the US. You don't ask questions, and everybody's running around stressed out. And then, now, 15 years later, we're in an environment where people will challenge everything. They will challenge everything and everyone. And so culture is really important. So, if you're looking at bringing someone into your organization, are they going to fit? Are they going to challenge the status quo? Have you made it comfortable and safe for people to ask questions?
Exactly.
Have you made it comfortable and safe for people to ask questions? Have you reiterated that with your teams, whether they are whether you're hiring them or you fill the position through an outsourcing mechanism. I think that's something that's really, really important, because you're right. It is the secret sauce.
Yeah. It's, and there's a great book by I think it's Jeff Smith, called Who. And, it's really who you hire is who you are as a company, right? So are they in that cultural dynamic, and do they represent what the culture of the company is? Yeah. And that doesn't mean it's all, 40-year-old white men. It's what's the attitude to innovation? What's the attitude towards respect of other people? What's the attitude towards getting things done?
Absolutely. So, Sean, as someone who has led multiple tech companies to success, what do you believe are the most crucial qualities or skills that a CEO or decision maker should look for when it comes to senior level tech talent or senior executive talent? What skills should they possess to contribute to the organization's growth and innovation? Because, and I asked that question, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the World Economic Forum's study that came out a few years ago about upskilling and reskilling your staff. Organizations are going to have to upskill and reskill 50% of their employees. And so tech is a big thing. Soft skills are a big thing, critical thinking. And so tell me, what are some of your thoughts around that?
That's an excellent question. And it really depends on the level the company is at. Okay. So having gone from 0 to 1 with a bunch of companies and then beyond, it's the first person that I hire complements me in terms of mindset, skill set, everything. So I'm not a technical person, but I've started tech companies. So it's really having that person who is a senior architect mindset, who's problem solving from a high level, because we're going to build the team under that person. And so that person is thinking about scalability, usability, design, infrastructure, everything around the sort of wrapping. And then you bring in the plumbers. It's kind of like building a house, right? You bring an architect and a designer. You don't want to over design because then it gets too expensive. You want to build, but you do want to have good plumbers that come in after that and put in the plumbing and the drywallers and everything else like that. It's very much like that. Yeah. When you get to a bigger organization, your leader, and still can be the leader all the way through, but sometimes the leader in the technology side of your business that got you to the bootstrapped software that got you into customers, that got you into funding, that got you to the next level, isn't the person who can take you all the way. And I've seen that a lot because that person might be someone who loves getting into the code, deep into the code, and can't take themselves out of it. And they become firefighters, and, the code isn't scalable because it's been, bootstrapped quite a bit. And they're hanging on to that instead of thinking about bigger picture and becoming more of a staff CTO who's thinking about who can run the business for them, who can, what's the organization look like? So it really depends on the stage of the company. But you mentioned earlier about the mix, and really, you don't want somebody who think I'm a visionary CEO. You want the implementer, right?
Yes. Yes. The person that can get someone who can take that vision and break it down into compartments. As you were talking, some of the thoughts that came to my mind were, of course, mindset, futuristic, so they can understand the big picture that you have. Someone who's strategic and a strategic thinker. So not just a strategic action taker, but someone who's a strategic thinker who may have to come back around and say, Sean, this isn't going to work in this place at this time, but we can do it over here.
Exactly. And if that's the person, then you've got a great CTO. Yeah. If they're diving and trying to rescue their own code all the time, that's not the right CTO. That becomes a good VP of engineering.
So my question to you guys who are listening, do you have the right number two person next to you? Do you have the right number two person next to you? Are you holding on to old technology, old systems, old processes that are not getting you where you need to go? And that can be related to technology, and it can be related to your human capital as well. So, really do an evaluation of where are we as a company? Where were we during the pandemic? Where are we post pandemic? Where are we with, more than 5 generations in the workplace? How do we all play together on the playground? And then how do we create this space for outsourcing?
Right.
And how do we bring them, make them a part of our organization?
Yeah. And outsourcing isn't necessarily a part of anyone's organization. It depends on what you need. Really, what I think where outsourcing comes in handy is when you really want to focus on your game, on what you're really good at. What is your core competence, and what can you accelerate that is not in your core competence that you can plug in? So, just think about even in everyday life, you may want to, in your own business, you may want to bring in your own marketing team, or you may want to outsource a really good marketing expertise from somewhere else, that it's an agency in your town or somewhere else that knows how to accelerate your business in the marketing world, either social media or traditional or whatever it is you're doing.
Yeah.
You may want a lawyer. You may want to hire a lawyer. You may want a VP finance. You may want to hire an accounting firm. So all these things are everyday outsourcing options based on what you really want to focus on, and focus on what matters most to you, not on what others can do better and more efficiently.
I love it. I love it. So Global Talent Accelerator is committed to helping tech companies build strong and stronger teams efficiently. And, I'll tell you, when I first started my career, and I talk about it in my book, but when I first started my career, I was always a team of one. I was, all of the positions on the org chart. On the org chart, on the football team, all of it, right? I got it done. And as I continued to move and started to have supervisory responsibilities, that was hard, because I knew how to win as a single person, but how do I win as a team? So what do you believe are the most crucial qualities or skills that you could share, some principles or strategies around how to simplify and expedite the process of assembling high-performing teams?
Wow. Okay. Well, let me go back to your first statement, which was about how you were the quarterback and blocker and wide receiver. The hardest part as entrepreneurs is letting go, because you can get it done, but eventually you just don't have the time to do everything.
Absolutely. And that's what I learned from that experience on this side, because I fell back to, I can do it all.
Right.
I can do it all, Sean.
No, well, you can, but you won't go very far, right?
No.
So it's like the old, the African thing: go fast, want to go fast, go alone; go far, go with a team. Yeah. So that's the thing. It's the hardest part. Just like the CTO example I was giving, if they can't let go, they're not going to grow. And that's what you've got. That's the first part. And that includes not believing that only the people you hire are good at code. Hiring anything, you've got a 50-50 chance of winning. Outsourcing, it's a lower chance of winning, but that's because, as I said, lack of data, lack of process, lack of time. And that's and we now have 79,000 companies in our database. We are the broker that does a matchmaking service, so we can take all that stuff off. Yeah. But the important part is just the concept of saying, this is what we're really good at, and we're going to stick in this lane. We're going to accelerate our business as fast as we can with other services or other technologies that can accelerate our go-to-market strategy.
Okay.
Yeah. Does that answer your question?
It does. I guess the follow-up question I want to ask with that is, how do you, and I don't know if you can, how do you ensure that that they remain high performing? How do you, you're in the middle of this project rollout. Right. How do you ensure that everyone is working on the team efficiently and effectively?
Okay.
And that it doesn't just become, well, it's my thing because I've got the most XYZ. I don't know. And these are some of the things that I've seen in organizations. I don't know if it ever happens in the tech world, but that we're a team and we're moving together and we're gelling together, but I know better about this. And so then I relapse back into that anti-team behavior. So how do we keep everything moving synchronous?
That's an interesting question. So there's, in most early stage companies, we work with what's called an agile methodology.
Yes.
Are you with that?
Yes, okay. A little bit.
So you kind of set up what you're going to build and you break it down into tiny parts. And you meet as a team once every week or once every 2 weeks. And you say, okay, these are the user stories that we're going to try and build out over the next little while. Here's the component parts, and people can pull those parts and write the code for them and then fulfill. And so on a daily basis, you have what's called a stand-up meeting.
Yes.
Okay. Where it literally means standing up and having a meeting so that so it's quick. And you're just looking for what are the blockers, what are the wins, and who needs to put up their hand and say, I need help, and then go and help that person. So that is a very effective way of keeping an eye on progress. And there's all kinds of tools for managing that electronically if it's a remote team. But that methodology is a really good process, even for anything, whether it's your marketing team or whether it's your sales team, just having sort of a short-term goal, a big picture broken into 1 or 2 week, what we call sprints, and then breaking the sprints down into component parts, which we call pulls. So people could just pull that piece, code it, put it back in, and then you reassemble and you demonstrate what you've built at the end of a sprint. Right.
So that process allows people to take ownership, because if I own this piece, I'm going to do my part because I don't want to let the team down. And I don't want to be in the stand-up meeting saying I dropped the ball.
Right.
And
you do want to be in the stand-up meeting, say I dropped the ball, because that's when you want to do it before it's too late. You don't want to fake it until the second week and everyone else is done and you're sitting there going, and you're a key component of it, and you haven't got it finished.
That's good. That's good.
That's the point, is that, and that when I was talking about that culture fit, you want to have people who are not afraid to put up their hand and say, I need help, not afraid to ask a question, not afraid to point out the problems, because there's always problems.
Always. Always. Yeah. I thanks for going back and clarifying that, because you're right. If you say, everybody's going around saying, I got it, and I don't say I don't got it, there's going to be a problem. And I can think about projects that I've been on where we got to places where we should have been moving together, and someone should have said something, 5 meetings ago.
Right.
So that someone could have jumped in to support. So I really wanted to expand that a little bit, because I know that many companies are challenged with creating high performing teams, and we call them results driven teams because many of the teams are remote now or they're hybrid, and so really having some type of process to remember, hey, we're one team and we can do this. And I love the idea of the stand up meetings. I'm very familiar with that.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. So, and when you are remote, it's really important to have a good project manager who knows how to really observe how performance is going on a daily basis, and keep people on track. It's the whip, right? It's the person, or redirect people into different groups and different teams, based on who they're going to work best with. So, that's a key function in terms of high performance teams.
So Sean, tell me about these three continents and these 8 countries. In your experience working across, the countries, the continents, have you observed any significant differences in the demand for senior level tech talent? And if so, how have these influenced your approach to outsourcing?
Yeah.
Are you seeing some of the same things across the board or different things?
Yeah. Well, as I said, when people think of outsourcing, they often just think of low cost India. That may be true in some agencies, but good talent, especially since COVID, good talent anywhere knows it's good talent and is priced accordingly.
Yeah.
And they've been, Google, Facebook, Amazon, they all have major offices in these countries that were considered low cost. They're the ones standing outside the gate of IITs, which is the Stanford and Harvard equivalents of universities in India, signing $250,000 signing bonuses for fresh graduates. I mean, don't kid yourself. If you want good talent, it's not cheap, no matter where in the world. I mean, just the numbers. The United States produces last I checked, 49,500 graduates in computer science and computer engineering per year. On any given year, there's 500,000 jobs in those categories. So about 10% is filled by actually local talent. Wow. So the only way to fix that is companies do outsource. And that's why these companies are setting up offices all around the world. Now that puts a high demand. In Canada, for example, before COVID, a lot of companies discovered, hey, Canadians speak like Americans. They think like Americans. They almost act like Americans, and they're 30% cheaper because the Canadian dollar is worth 30% less than an American dollar. So I could get for $100,000 what would cost me $180,000 in the United States. And so Canadian market started to get really tight because people were working for these US firms remotely. And that created a demand. That's why Canada opened up its borders for tech workers, because we need to fill the gaps and help Canadian companies grow. Now with remote pervasive, a whole bunch of things happen. Like you would have thought that with all the layoffs that have happened in the tech world over the last year and a half, that the market in all other parts of the world would have gone down. Truth is, South America is probably one of the hardest markets to find talent in right now because the prices have gone up. Everybody said all the companies were told, increase your runway, get to profitability at some point. Imagine that for a tech company.
Right.
But in doing so, they shaved off a lot of their staff, and then they still had to grow. So they would look in other markets which had you're basically doing arbitrage on currencies and costs. And so they went to South America, Latin America, and now those countries are really hot. A lot of people used to go to Europe, Eastern Europe, especially because the education, that's where we used to go, is really follow where we would, for bringing talent into North America, into Canada, we would focus on countries that had economic or political uncertainty in the future, because senior leaders are generally at an age where they're starting a family, or they have a family, and they want safety for their kids. So if there's economic or political uncertainty, they want to go to a safe place. Canada's a great place. Oh, wow. But we would do it along the Russian border because of, as has been proven, there's political or economic uncertainty along those borders. And now even more so, because with the war, by some estimates, there were 250,000, 250,000 software engineering talent that has been displaced by the war, either being recruited into the war, or you can't do business with Russians or Belarusians anymore. They're sanctioned against doing exports. So you've lost all that talent. And so you take 250,000 of engineering out of a market. Guess what happens? All the prices start to rise.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So there are two things that you said that really stuck out to me. Good talent is not cheap. Yep. And that's in any industry, right? Every organization wants the best talent. They want the best talent, and it's going to cost, whether you hire them on board or if you outsource them. There's going to be a financial requirement for that. And then your strategy for how to fill the vats back in Canada, kind of focusing on the places where there was economic and political uncertainty and kind of building that up. And so for my listeners, I want you to think about that for a minute, because you're probably thinking, well, that's not going to work for me. No. You're not listening in with the right ear. What I want you to think about, the takeaway from that is, what strategies can you use to find new talent? Where have you not gone for talent? Are you using the same places to find talent and you're getting those same resumes over and over again? I love when people go on site, go to different colleges, do on site interviews, do group interviews. I think I read this in one of your articles for Forbes that you wrote. If you want to increase diversity in your organizations, there are, I don't know how many there are, but there are HBCUs across the country. Go and connect with them and do on-site interviews there. Ask the people that work for you, would you refer your friends here? Would you refer someone to work? Would you recommend us as a good place to work? You'll really find out some things there. And so you really find out some things there. So really think about your strategy of, where are we finding talent? Can we stretch? Are we looking at the right places? So I like that. I really like that. That it made me think with some of the things that I'm helping clients with right now is moving beyond the safety zone when it comes to talent and or outsourcing. Yeah.
No, and you're right. And go, you can if you hire the right senior leadership, you can bring people in who are not that senior and they'll rise fast. So if you hire the first tier well, that will raise every other boat. There's I forgot the statistic. I might not have this accurately, but if you're surrounded by people who are high performers, your performance goes up 15%. If you're surrounded by low performers, your performance drops 35%.
Yeah, I believe that.
So you're a 50% range based on who you're hiring in your organization. So go hire well.
Hire well. Absolutely. Sean, what are you reading that we should be reading?
So that book that I just mentioned, which was Who by Jeff Smart, sorry, not Jeffrey.
Okay.
Geoff. It's the Bible for how to hire. And ultimately it comes down to a really simple thing. If I give you a task, Dr. Lowe, what are the chances that you'll get it 90% right? If you don't, then I'm digging in and helping you all the time, right?
Oh my goodness.
Then that is not a great hire. Right? So that's fundamentally the story of the book, but it has lots of great tips and advice in there. And the other book I'm reading is a phenomenal book by a guy named Dan Martell, who does a lot of coaching online, and he has an organization called the SaaS Academy, which is a great organization of software as a service companies and how to build out their business. I highly recommend that as well. But his book is called How to Buy Back Your Time. And that is all about kind of like what I was talking about the company, focus on what you're really good at and let others do the things that you're only half decent at. Mm-hmm. And you will be excellent. You will accelerate 10x from where you are today.
I love it. I love it. I hope you enjoyed this episode. We've been chatting with Sean Lando, CEO of Outforce. Visit the show notes to see how to connect with Sean. Be sure to grab a copy of Results-Driven Organizations, the 4 Keys to a High-Performance Workplace, and use the link in the show notes and grab our special gift to you for being a valuable listener. Until next time.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Results Driven Organizations Podcast with Dr. Tanya Lowe. Be sure to review the show notes for the resources mentioned, and don't forget to grab your free gift available at freegiftfromtanya.com.